on the Healthy Streets programme, so that's obviously often delivered by boroughs. So how is TfL continuing with the Healthy Streets programme, and what work is ongoing with boroughs on that?
So we are continuing with our Healthy Streets programme, and that includes on a regular basis looking at what boroughs want to do, albeit in a very difficult financial circumstance. At the moment, we're not able to commit to boroughs in the way we would like to. Yet another reason to get our financial settlement sorted out long term, such that we can commit with confidence. But we do have a number of schemes that are ongoing. We are maintaining our scrutiny of those schemes in conjunction with boroughs, so that if either they need to be made permanent, tweaked, or taken out, that is something that is a well-rehearsed process. So, but again, it's done through careful analysis. It shouldn't be subjective or knee-jerk. It should be done through careful analysis. Did the scheme achieve its intended benefit, and/or has it had unintended consequences, and does it therefore need revision?
Okay. In terms of the sort of modal share shift, and in particular, I suppose, the shift away from private car use, I wanted to flag up, obviously I represent Croydon and Sutton, so specifically thinking about areas like that. I don't know how aware you are, or the sort of policy people in this area, of how different a conversation, let's say in this part of London, or many other parts of London where public transport is quite widespread, how that lands in those boroughs. And I'll give you an example. So like many people, I consider how I'm going to make a journey. So 2 journeys I made this weekend. On Saturday, I had to go over to Croydon from home. The options were 31 minutes by car, 30 minutes by bike, and 50 minutes by public transport. So I think it should be quite apparent why people who aren't maybe as willing as I am to cycle for half an hour might not want to, effectively 40 minutes on a round trip. And then on Sunday, I made a trip to Sutton, and the timings were 16 minutes by car, 19 minutes by bike, or 47 minutes by public transport, and 60 minutes walking. So the public transport is very nearly as long as walking, and 3 times as long as a car or a bike. And so when we have this conversation here about how everyone should be giving up their car and instead, switching to public transport, are those the kinds of numbers that you have in mind, that are the choices, the modal shift choices that people in Sutton or Croydon might face, and how can we have that conversation that sounds real to people who, when they're thinking about switching, those are the journey times that they're looking at?
No, I think they're good points. I mean, certainly my view as your Transport Commissioner would be that you can't just cajole people into giving up their cars. You can't just implore them to do that. You've got to create a viable, attractive alternative. And there are a number of factors that need to be present in order to meet that definition. Journey time being one, cleanliness of the service, ease of use of the service, make it easy to use. It's obviously got to be safe, and it's got to be convenient. So you won't otherwise just get people out of their car if the alternative is unattractive in terms of any of those factors, I would suggest. So those are factors that we continually look at, and that to me is how you get people to make that modal shift. You can't just tell them if when they try the alternative, the reality is unattractive.
Well, I mean, if I can speak for myself, I opted not to try what the 47-minute public transport journey would look like, and I suspect most people probably wouldn't. I mean, my point is, notwithstanding punctuality and cleanliness and all the rest of it, the conversation about, why people might choose to have a car, I think the conversation that we have in public around that often tends to assume that they are stupid, or I think the Walking and Cycling Commissioner published a tweet yesterday saying that people don't understand the cost of owning a car. And, when you see a journey time difference of 16 minutes or 47 minutes, it feels to me as if we're sort of trying to browbeat people and tell them that they're stupid or wrong, when perhaps the conversation coming the other way might suggest what we're asking of people is not realistic.
Well, you used the word browbeat, I used the word cajole, so in many ways they're one and the same. I think it's facile to just say to people, that's a bad practice, you must not do that if you don't make the alternative attractive. So I unashamedly advocate for public transport. You'd find it odd if I didn't. I've been doing this now for 33 years, and I've never owned a car in my life. But that's my choice. I'm not saying that everyone is able to make that commitment or statement. But I do think, as a public transport advocate, that you must make the offer attractive. And for that, you must have the funding to make it attractive. So I want certainly to see public transport put on a level playing field, such that we've got a fighting chance of making that offer attractive, so that you end up with a virtuous cycle. So if get sufficient people migrating to public transport, those that choose not to or can't and continue to use their car, they themselves would also benefit, because the roads would be less congested, because there would be fewer people using cars, because more people would be using buses and trains. So if you get it right, it's kind of a win-win.
Well, I don't want to prolong the conversation. I suppose what I would say is I'm not sure of a TfL funding settlement, past or present or future, in this world or the next, that is likely to close a gap that is that big. And I mean, that is an unusually large, but 2 to 1 is quite common. And I think
Sure.
what I would say is that the question is not about funding, it's about the practicalities of delivering public transport in a relatively less dense, more suburban part of London, where there isn't an installed base of tube lines, for example. And even though in Croydon there is the tram, most of Croydon doesn't have the tram. I'll leave that line of questioning there, because I just want to make the point that it's all very well saying that with more funding or with cleaner services, people would switch. People aren't going to switch if it takes twice as long, and I don't see any plan on the table for it not to take twice as long. That would be my point. Finally, on